HIV/AIDS stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus Infection and Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, and it can be spread through bodily fluids such as blood, breast milk, and semen. The HIV/AIDS epidemic is one of the more recent and more deadly diseases spread throughout the world. AIDS causes the body's immune system to shut down and leaves the infected person susceptible to deadly diseases that would otherwise be stopped through natural processes and immunities. The AIDS epidemic is also unique because of the social stigmas that surround it. In countries such as the United States, the AIDS virus is associated with homosexual intercourse, drug use, and promiscuous behavior. The standard belief around the virus was generally that if someone contracted it, they deserved it. Little was known about the transmission or spread of AIDS until very recently. As late as 1997, 53% of Americans believed that AIDS could be contracted by sharing a glass with an infected person or coming in contact with an infected person's cough, and 40% believed it could be contracted by sharing the same public restroom. Even now, in countries like South Africa, the virus is still very much surrounded with stigma, where public officials deny the seriousness of the virus or even that it affects their country at all. Because of the social stigma and overall lack of understanding of awareness, it has been difficult to support the finding of a cure or researching the subject until recently. The virus isn't directly lethal, but instead attacks the immune system of infected hosts and leaves them weak to lethal amounts of common diseases that would have otherwise been fought by a fully functioning immune system. Disease takes quite some time to fully develop. The first stages of the virus usually begin with symptoms associated with influenza or the flu. Headaches, sore throat, cough, muscle fatigue, vomiting, and diarrhea are present in most cases and are early signs of the virus attacking the immune system. The initial symptoms don't last for any longer than a month in most cases, and because of the nature of the symptoms, victims are usually misdiagnosed and the virus goes unnoticed. After the deceptively benign symptoms end, those infected with HIV can have an extended period of time with no symptoms or signs of the illness, but still have the virus flourishing in their blood. This period of time can last from 3 to 10 years with no serious health problems in the host. This silent stage ends with the symptoms appearing again in the victim, such as swelling of the lymph nodes and rashes. Once symptoms appear again, it usually means the victim is immune deficient. Soon several infections will break out, such as TB, herpes, and other genital rashes and infections. This stage concludes with the victim entering the AIDS stage of the virus. Once the victim reaches the AIDS stage, their symptoms vary because they become susceptible to a great number of diseases and infections. The most common symptoms are rashes, herpes, weight loss, and fatigue. Currently, there is no cure for AIDS. Each victim will progress at a unique rate, but the AIDS virus is always fatal, especially once the virus damages the immune system to a stage where it can no longer function. The origin of HIV can be traced back to a similar immune deficient disorder, SIV-CPZ, that infects primates. Research indicates that the M and O groups of the HIV-1 virus are all genetically related to SIV-CPZ. Moreover, another primate disease associated with largely hunted and domesticated primates called SIV-SM is nearly identical to HIV-2, and contact between humans and these primates is highly documented. The origin of HIV-1 is not entirely certain, since no concrete connection to a SIV-CPZ and an HIV-1 carrying primate and human can be established. The spread of the disease has been linked to rampant prostitution in Africa after contact with an SIV-carrying primate, either through consumption or sexual contact. Prostitution would have spread these diseases, especially considering that HIV infects humans more easily when the host of the virus already has an STD. Prostitution and a great concentration of sexual activity proved to be an effective breeding ground for the disease. The HIV epidemic that came to prominence in the late 70s and early 80s is believed to originate from Haiti. Haitians were some of the most infected subgroups in the U.S., and the strain of HIV identified in most cases in the United States is the same strain that originated in Haiti. It is believed that a few individuals brought the virus over from Haiti as early as 1969. The virus then spread slowly throughout the homosexual community as well as drug users, Haitians, and hemophiliacs living in the United States. It wasn't until 1982 and 1983 that the disease was officially recognized and classified as HIV/AIDS by the Center for Disease Control. AIDS is traditionally associated with the stigma that it carries in the United States and many parts of Africa. The reason for social stigma is mostly due to the large amount of homosexuals that contract the disease. Some other social implications of HIV infection is drug use and sexual promiscuousness. In the United States, the AIDS stigma is one of the most destructive aspects of the disease because it causes infected individuals to avoid testing or being vocal about their condition. It also prevents efforts to raise awareness and find a cure. The epidemic in the 1980s consisted of 61% males who contracted the disease through homosexual intercourse. Because of this widespread infection of the homosexual community, the epidemic was dubbed the gay plague by some, and initially the Center for Disease Control referred to the virus as GRID, or gay-related immune deficiency. Due to the fact that the homosexual community was already widely ostracized at the time, several efforts by the United States government were made to stop funding for AIDS education and prevention. Because of these efforts, the spread of the disease went on unopposed in the United States, and the search for a cure was almost non-existent. The problem was so severe that efforts to stop the virus weren't made for years after the initial rise of the epidemic because it had not infected the general population, which did not include gay men. In recent years, the AIDS epidemic is seen in a far more sympathetic light, but many misconceptions and stigmas about the disease still exist. Efforts are being made to raise awareness, and AIDS prevention is taught in schools, albeit with a similar say no approach that was used in the 1980s. Today in Africa, the governments and communities aren't so sensitive to the issue. Many African leaders condemn those infected, and in some extreme cases sentence victims to death or incarceration. Some leaders even denied the existence of the disease in their country. Any humanitarian efforts to assist in these areas are met with resistance from higher-ups, but some do get help from outside sources in these areas. HIV/AIDS is centralized in these areas and account for more than 60% of the world's AIDS-infected population. The social stigma surrounding AIDS in this area is for many of the same reasons as in the United States during the 1980s. In any case, an AIDS epidemic has detrimental cultural and economic effects due to a shortage of workers and a fear of catching the virus. The best way to fight AIDS as of today is with awareness and knowledge of what the disease is, and how to avoid it with a gradual transition from an epidemic in the United States to a more controlled situation has shown this. As of now, the search for a cure continues. Some vaccines have been tested over the years due to the United States AIDS epidemic bringing greater awareness to the virus. As of 2016, there is still no solid vaccination for HIV. The most prominent cure efforts are in the field of genetics and gene therapy. Scientists hope to alter human DNA to make the immune system more resistant to the virus. The most promising cure efforts have come from these gene experiments that have resulted in mutated human genes that erase HIV from infected hosts. As far as awareness is concerned, the United States has a significantly more sensitive stance on the issue than it did previously. Sexual education and STD prevention is now a common course taught in public schools across America, and government funding for more programs is more available than ever. Efforts are being made to dispel common misconceptions about HIV/AIDS, although there is more controversy over how this issue should be approached. The most common awareness efforts in school is abstinence, which teaches that the most effective method of prevention is to avoid sexual contact altogether. Supporters for AIDS education argue this isn't effective enough, but the issue remains a hotly debated topic. In conclusion, HIV/AIDS is one of the most devastating viruses that still exists today. The disease is unique because not only does it manifest in an almost undetectable and incurable manner, but also harbors social stigma for those that are infected. The United States may not accept HIV as the gay plague anymore, but in Africa, the most affected area in the world, that is still very much the sentiment. Spreading awareness and supporting prevention efforts are vital to finding a cure and stopping the spread of the disease, but because of the fear and implications that AIDS is associated with, there is still a great challenge in doing so. Prevention efforts are being made, and as recently as 2013, breakthroughs in a cure were made. The world is making strides to eradicate the disease, but is nowhere near close.